You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's the Chameleon Church Show. That means it's Tuesday morning, and it's September 17th. That's right. It's already halfway through September, and we just got here. I don't know what's going on. I'm reminded of something I heard some prophetic guy say. He was wherever he was staying, there was like this abandoned refrigerator in the back porch, and he noticed one morning that there was a nest in the freezer of this abandoned refrigerator. And the next morning he's out there with his coffee, and you know what's really funny is I said coffee, and there's actually people out there that would think this guy's not a real prophet because he's drinking coffee. True. There's actually people out there that would think that. Anyway, and then he noticed that there was eggs in the nest the next morning. He's like, well, that's weird. Yesterday there was nothing there. And then the next day he's out there drinking his coffee on the porch, and he notices little chicks. Yeah, that's me imitating little chicks. There's little chicks in the nest, and that really freaked him out because it was like a bam, bam, bam in a 3-day process. He's like, whoa, what's going on? And the Lord told him, I'm accelerating. I've accelerated everything. I've accelerated creation or whatever. Yeah, that was a while ago. So yeah, that's it's already 17th of September, people. It's already past the midway mark. Anyway, Chameleon Church coming to you live and direct from Park City, Utah. I'm your host, Allan Aguirre. Be sure to check out the website, Messianic Lamb Radio. You can subscribe, you can share, you can like, you can also dislike, and you can leave insane comments in the comment threads too. Oh my. And what else can you do? Oh yeah, and be sure to donate to the Lamb Radio Network cause and all that good stuff. We're going to get to the Torah portion today, and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of really serious stuff about blessings and curses and how we can align ourselves to receive the blessing, and of course all the things we can do to receive the curses, which I think the majority of us, I think we probably do that more than the other, I'm thinking. But anyway, so let's bring in our cohorts, our co-hosts for the Chameleon Church show. That's what it's called. We've got Jamie, bam, right there, and then we've got the Rabbi, another trigger word, Darryl. What's going on, boys?
Top of the morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. What's going on? It's another Tuesday morning. You guys survived another week.
Yep, and I'm disqualifying myself as a prophet right now.
Why?
He's drinking coffee. He's drinking coffee.
Oh. You know,
yours obviously hasn't kicked in yet.
Mine hasn't kicked in yet. There are actually people out there that would believe that. I remember there's this Christian church in Minneapolis that brought in bands, and if you could get these people to bring you in, you would bank. It was like an important stop on your tour, but they were very strict, you know, and all my buddies were like betting there's no way they're gonna let you in that place, dude. They're not gonna let you in that place because I'm too, you know. And I got in, and so we were playing our first show there, and I'm on eggshells because I don't want to blow it, because this is a big show. They're gonna pay you good. The people are gonna spend all their money on your merch. This is gonna be it's a big ticket show. You're gonna make a lot of money. So I'm like on eggshells because I don't want to blow it. And we were praying for somebody after the show, and as I was praying for this guy, I could see like the 2 or 3 of the staff from the church that run the place. They're kind of watching me. And I'm like, man, you know, I'm a little nervous. And then this guy starts manifesting. And he goes flying across the room. I mean, demonically manifested. He's floating. He's laying on the ground, but from his chest up, he's like, how do I do this? He's like levitating.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't raise your legs unless your hips are on the ground. You know what I'm saying? But everything from his shoulder blades down are off the ground, which is impossible. And I'm like, crap. And these people are like terrified and they're backing away in total fear while I'm like doing my Shondo thing, getting rid of this demon on the guy. And I'm like, that's it. They're never going to ask me back. This guy just manifests. He's freaking levitating on the floor. Oh my gosh. No, the exact opposite, man. They were like, oh my God. They loved me, right? So they took me to their church the next day. And I walked in, it's been a late night. It's, when you're on the road, you wake up in the crack of noon. You don't wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning to go to church or whatever. So it's really early. I'm really tired. We walked into this church, the church that funds this whole ministry. And I'm there, I'm playing the ambassador. Not only did I get in, so to all my friends that said I'd never get in, I'm now being invited to church. So I go into the church. I'm like, can I get some coffee? I'm really tired. I just woke up and they're like, oh, we don't drink coffee. I'm like, why? She goes, it's a drug. It's caffeine. And I'm like, oh no. And I walked in. It was like full on Ken and Barbie church, dude. Ken and Barbie everywhere. They don't serve coffee because coffee is bad. They don't drink coffee. And I'm like, oh, I just blew it. But no, I didn't blow it. They had me back multiple times, but they didn't drink coffee. Now I live in Utah. I'm surrounded by Mormons who don't drink coffee. They don't drink any hot caffeinated drinks, coffee, tea, and they don't drink soda. Some of them do, and that's like, ooh, they drink a Pepsi or a Coke. They will drink hot chocolate. That's the only hot drink they drink. They do not drink hot tea. They do not drink coffee. Just like this church, this Christian evangelical church, didn't drink coffee because it was a drug and it was a sin. There are people out there that will not, they're drinking coffee. They can't be a good Christian, let alone a prophet. Jesus came eating and drinking.
Yeah, but you see,
they wrote him off for that.
If you have the chameleon mug, then you can drink coffee.
There you go.
All right.
And there are people out there that think I'm a whack job because I named our ministry Chameleon. There you go.
There's my coaster.
I don't even have it.
What?
He's a true disciple. He's got a chameleon mug.
I'm a groupie.
I don't have anything chameleon. Just the name. But there's actually people out there that think that our ministry name Chameleon is demonic and that we're a serpentine church and on and on and on. Why would he call his church Chameleon? And I'm like, well, did you go to the website and read why we called it Chameleon? And they're like, well, it's an unclean animal. So is a lion and a horse. That's not bothering any of your iconology, right? Or your symbology. People freak me out, man. You freak me out. Now, the people on our live chat don't freak me out because they like us. And they're nice to us. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Desiree. She likes my cap. Now, so over the weekend, we had the Extreme Tour. And those of you that have my new book, we've been on for 8 minutes and I'm already doing it. So my new book, Thing is Spiritual.
Kevin's already posted the link. So,
oh, awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So This Thing is Spiritual, my new book. If you have that book, I talk about the Extreme Tour and the objective. And so we had the Extreme Tour in town this last weekend, and the team leaders, Angelo and Kim, they're basically family. We've known Angelo since Dallas. We used to harass him about, hey, you should be hanging out with us, come back to Jesus, and he was doing his thing, and he has, and he did anyway. So they're the team leaders, and they showed up this weekend on the Extreme Tour. They're the leaders. They just got back. Literally, they just showed up. They flew in from London. They've been in the UK for the last month doing the first objective and the Extreme Tour. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, man, I really want an 8-panel cap. And the one you saw me wear a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, or even last week, is an 8-panel. I love that one, but it's totally different. This is the button snap 8-panel with like there's this show on Netflix I don't recommend because of the sex and violence and the rated R called Peaky Blinders. They wear these. Don't watch the show. Don't do that. Anyway, so it's one of those type of hats. And so I asked, hey, could you pick me one up? Well, because you're in the UK, obviously. And he said, yeah. So they got one in Camden and brought it for me. So thank you. They said it was a nice hat, and they liked the cap. Thank you. Yeah, I like it too. I can't wear baseball caps, but I can wear these. So what else? Coffee Prophet, someone says. Yeah. A cafe. That's a good name for a coffee. Yeah. Well, you guys have heard of the all those little Christian coffee shops out there. They're called Hebrews and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. Yeah. It's a drug, but we don't have Hebrews roots that drink too much alcohol and marijuana. That's right, Desiree. That's like the big mind blower. All the people that smoke pot in the Hebrew roots movement. That blows my mind. I mean, when you're a nominal Christian like I was, or whatever, when I was in disobedience and I was smoking pot, and then I just went, no, I got to stop. I got to be obedient and stop. I think it's worse than just Christians smoking pot because, right, you're doing Torah. You're supposed to know better. Yeah. It's a problem. Yeah. So that's what I did over the weekend. We had the Extreme Tour, and we couldn't do the event at the skate park because we needed insurance indemnifying the county and the little church down the block we've been working with that we're no longer working with wouldn't provide with the insurance. Didn't even, yeah. So we're pretty much done with those people. Sad but true. We did everything we could.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you that saw my post yesterday about Jesus speaking in parables, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that. If you have a dull heart, there's other things happening with your heart, and it's sad. I don't do that with any joy.
No, because ultimately it leads to their destruction. And like I was just sharing with you, my uncle passed away last week, and so the funeral was on Sunday. So I went to Toronto, and my uncle was heavily involved in Kabbalah. He went to the Kabbalah Center. And they were the ones, as a matter of fact, the former rabbi of the Kabbalah Center was the officiant for the funeral. And he's talking about all this stuff. And I'm watching my family, and there's probably about between 75 and 100 people there at the funeral. Most of them, cousins, things like that. A lot of people I haven't seen in years and years. And just watching the lostness, they're absolutely lost. And then my aunt, who's about 90, she is the widow of my dad's eldest brother who died back in the 80s. Guy had Lou Gehrig's disease. And she just said, so are you still in that thing? This is the way my family refers to it. Is that thing.
To the faith?
Yeah. Are you still doing that thing? And it was like, oh yeah. Yeah. I got a great online ministry now. And I've got this congregation. I was talking to the pastor in Kenya. I ministered to them on Saturday morning. It's always great to get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning to wake you up to try to preach. And I don't make coffee because then I won't go back to sleep again. But he's got 92 people now at his congregation. When I started, they had about 25.
That's nice.
They're exploding over there. So God's doing some neat things.
Did I mention last week that I got a report, or did I get the report after the show, that some missionaries in Kenya are using Oh my God. I just cracked myself up. You got to understand, I do this for my own amusement. Anyway, I got a report from the Rude Awakening people that one of their ambassadors, someone who funds, helps fund Rude Awakening, is a missionary to Kenya, and they are using the Feast Unlocked book and workbooks as their curriculum to teach the Kenyans that they're ministering to in Kenya the feasts.
That's an amazing idea. And you know what? When we go, I'm getting a bunch of your books to take over. That's
awesome. Isn't that awesome though? I think that's pretty darn cool. I think that's pretty darn cool that that's going on, and it's such a blessing to hear a report.
So I got to share what happened last week.
Please do.
Yeah, and then we'll let Jamie talk because
Oh, Jamie.
Jamie, what did you do this weekend? Because I got to share this thing. It's an amazing story. Everybody be blessed by it. But you go ahead. We want to hear what you did because we love you, brother.
Ready?
And you got to unmute yourself.
Can't hear you.
Hey, how's that?
Hey,
there you go.
That's good.
I went to Washington, D.C. and
right.
And I went to the Trump Towers. I was in the Trump Towers. I was out by the Washington Monument. I was there for a special meeting, and I met some really wonderful people. One of the people I met was a guy that is a sheriff. He's a tactical officer, and it's amazing how people are being persecuted for what they believe in. And he was the guy. I don't know if you saw it in the news not too long ago. I told him I wouldn't mention his name when I talked about him, but he was standing there in full gear with his uniform and everything on when they were doing that situation down in Florida not too long ago about the school shooting, and he was standing next to Vice President Pence, and he had a shirt on and he had a symbol on it, and it was a Q symbol, and from that he received so much persecution that he ended up being called before the board. Now this guy's been a SWAT team captain for like 26 years, 31 on the force, and because he had that on his I got somebody at my door. Robert, can you get that? Tell them we're busy here. So he had the Q on, and they literally demoted him from the job he was doing, put him in a squad car as a. He's
brother yours.
He's busy right now.
He's busy right now.
Yeah, can you come back after 11?
I'll see him after a while.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that was the maintenance man. That's another story. But bottom line was this guy got demoted, got his salary cut. He's driving a squad car, giving people tickets, versus being one of the top people in the area that's been trained with, the guy knows everything you can know about SWAT. And he's decorated, but because he wore this Q symbol. Now, Q is a movement where people are trying to become more patriotic, giving the news behind the scenes, and he got persecuted for this. It's unbelievable. So the things that are going more and more left are blowing my mind. If we don't stand up and speak up for our God and for our country, we're not going to have a country. So that's what was happening with me this weekend. In the Trump Tower, we met really some interesting people. Vince Lombardi's trophy was up on the bar. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but I won't go into all that. So that's all I'm going to tell you right now. I got to take care of the gym.
That's all you're going to tell us?
Well,
You're not going to tell us anymore?
Okay, I'll give you a real brief blessing. My brother, I take care of my brother. Well, the maintenance man, I'm getting ready to do a thing where I go get my stuff out in Oregon, and I need some time to do that. So I need somebody to take care of my brother. Well, the gal that I had lined up decides she wants to move after I've given her $100 to part of the money that I was going to give her to take care of my brother. And so I don't have that anymore. So I went to prayer, asked God to help me find a better person than I had. And the maintenance man, the reason he knocked on my door is because he told me about a lady that lives in the building next door to us. And he said, she is just amazing. She has, he said, there's nobody in the whole complex, and we got about 4 buildings that is an apartment like this woman. So I went over and knocked on her door. Her name's Anna, and she takes care of her daughter, who's 44 years old, that she's had birth problems when she was birthed. She's only 3'11". She's disabled. She has an implant for hearing. Her daughter does. So she takes care of her daughter full time. When I walked into her apartment, it was like walking into a house that was on Parade of Homes. I mean, it was perfect. Everything was just in order, it was neat, it was beautifully decorated. Even the kitchen table had all the place settings for 6 people, beautiful silverware, china. The whole thing was just unbelievable. Well, she invited me in, and on the wall, I knew that this was the right house, because on the wall I looked, and there was a Our Father, the Our Father, really nice plaque, gold, looked like a scroll, Torah scroll, just done really nice. So we ended up talking, and she even she wants to help. She was going to volunteer for free. I said no, but she really would like to help. She's been doing this with her daughter all her daughter's life, and she's very well familiar with helping and taking care of situations like this. So I got really blessed by that. That was an answered prayer. God did a real biggie for me. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's cool. Very good. Very good. All right. And then Darryl, you said you had something to share with us?
Yes. And this really gets down to the core of what we do. Last week, we had talked about the difference between blessing Israel and having a love for Israel and actually Jewish evangelism. And I don't think a lot of believers really understand that difference. We addressed this, I think, in a fair amount of detail. But last Thursday, I had an opportunity through a friend of mine. This is the woman who helped us organize the Passover Seder in Toronto this past spring. And she has a friend of hers he's an 85-year-old Jewish man who is a driver for the mafia. He was Jimmy Hoffa's driver, Tommy Corrigan, who is the head of the Teamsters in Canada, a number of different mob underworld figures, and he was the driver for them. And he ended up becoming a police informant, I guess back in the 70s or something like that, and flipped on a lot of these guys. And he did over 200 jobs for everybody, for RCMP, FBI, went international, even took down some of Gaddafi's guys who were trying to buy helicopter gunships to attack Israel with. I mean, the guy's got an amazing, he could sit there and regale you for hours because he's Jewish, so he can talk, right? So he had a biography written about him back in 2012. And so the intent was, I'd spoken to him on the phone a couple of times. And he said that when he gets the new shipment of his books in, he was going to give me a signed copy. Because unlike Allan, he will actually sign it for you without having to be asked. He just knows that needs to be done. So I'm just
it needs to be done.
So anyway, Allan just ships it in the mail and says, here you go, have fun. No personalization, no nothing. It's for me.
Oh my God.
So anyway, so I get there and the 3 of us are meeting in his condo party room or boardroom, actually. And he's just sitting there. He's telling me story after story. And one of the things he said to me, and I was actually well prepared for this, he says that one of the reasons why he became a police informant is because he wanted to make up for all the bad things that he had done. And he was trying to, even the score. And I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, you can't get a bigger doorway to drive a truck through than that. And I said, well, you don't actually need to, because God's already forgiven you because of the finished work of Messiah. And so we start talking. I start sharing the Lord with him. And I brought a Hebrew, English, Tanakh, and Brit Chadashah, New Covenant. There's a ministry called the Society for the Distribution of the Hebrew Scriptures based out of Nova Scotia. and they provide you with Hebrew, English, Old and New Covenants. They're two separate books, and you've got the Hebrew down on one side and English on the other. They do it also in Hebrew and Russian as well for the Russian community. So I had a few of these books, but one of them, a number of years ago, I had actually set up to give to this Jewish woman that I had been talking to, and I had put little sticky notes on the different Messianic prophecies, Isaiah 53, Isaiah 9:6, and everything else. So it was already ready to go. And so I grabbed this and I went to him and I sat down with him, and Karen, who was the woman who introduced us, she actually had to leave. So the two of us are just sitting there, and I'm showing him through the scriptures that the Jewish Messiah has come. We missed him, and that we don't give up our Jewish identity. As a matter of fact, and this is what I said at my wedding speech, which caused some of my family members to get up and walk out. It's the most Jewish thing in the world to believe in Yeshua as the Messiah. Well, he is so excited about this. He's fascinated by this. And it's like, it's amazing. And as I was leaving, he says to me, he says, I feel innocent. And I just looked and I said, forgiven. And so I called him last Friday morning, see how he was doing. He says, you know what? I'm not fully convinced yet, but I'm well on my way. And I know this is going to happen and everything else. And he's reading the book and everything else. And so he's excited. Friday night, he calls me 9:30 at night. And he says to me that he had just gotten off the phone with someone. So someone had gotten hold of his biography, and only God could arrange this. So someone had gotten hold of his biography, had his phone number, and called him up. And he starts calling him every name in the book and calling him this and that and the other thing. And you're such a bad man and everything else. And he got off the phone. He said he was really angry. But then he said, all of a sudden the thought came to him. He says, wait a minute. If the Almighty has forgiven me, who cares? He calls me up and he says, I believe. And he says it was like a 10,000-pound weight had come off of his shoulders. This guy, 85 years old, has the crushing weight of guilt that was upon him for decades because of what had happened. Listen, he grew up in he was in reform school and went to a foster home, and the foster home, his adopted brother or foster brother was a mob figure and got him in. And like, there was all kinds of terrible things that had happened to him that led him into this lifestyle. And he says, I did what I had to do. And I said, everybody understands that. I said, but God understands that. And I said, Messiah took all of that for you. He was judged for what you and I have done. You don't have to do anything. And he's so excited. So now he called me up 3 times yesterday. It was just like, he's going to be mikvahd. He's going to be immersed because we're having a Feast of Trumpets service next Sunday night in Niagara Falls. And we're going to have some baptisms, and he's going to get baptized now. And he just keeps telling me, I can't wait to get started with you. I want to help you get this message out, whatever you need me to do. And I'm thinking, I haven't heard anything like that in the 5 years since I've been up here in Peterborough. It's like, whatever you want me to do. Here, everybody says, whatever you do, whatever I want you to do. So I've got this guy who is absolutely on fire, 85 years old, got a new lease on life. And he is all fired up about getting the gospel out and telling everybody. He even called up his movie producer because they're making a film about his book, and his entertainment lawyer. The entertainment lawyer is Jewish. He told them what had happened, and they both think this is a great idea. And they might even incorporate it into the movie now. I don't know.
Who's gonna play Rabbi? Christopher Walken should play Rabbi Darryl.
He needs brown eyes, man. I don't know about those blue eyes, though. But you know what? I got to say, this is why I got out of bed in the morning. Ministering to this and teaching people and discipling them, that's all great and everything else. But that experience with Marvin was the core of why we do what we do.
There's a reason for all this nonsense, isn't there?
Well, it's just the beginning. This is going to be a big thing for you. Praise the Lord.
He has got connections like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he's connected with obviously Hollywood because the book and the movie. He's connected with the police force and the authorities. Many of them still know him because of his work for years, but he's also still connected with the underworld. He's got those. And I don't know where God is going to take this, and it's not up to me to determine. I'm just.
You got right here. You got Hollywood up here on my left side with Allan. And then you got the mafia Yeah, I'm here with me, so you got it all.
Maybe you'll be.
I'm with the cops. Is that the third party triumvirate?
Maybe you'll be the Billy Crystal character and analyze this, but it'll be Christopher Walken playing you.
It'll be analyzed that, not this.
But they've already made that one, so it's analyze another one.
Yeah. But with all the frustration and the disappointment and the aggravation that we've gone through, on Shabbat, I did a message on Psalm 144 about being a warrior for God and how David says, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and prepares my fingers for battle." It's this hyper grace thing has said that we just got to sit back and watch God do it all. And yet over and over and over, we see God moving them in. You got to go down. God's going to fight the battle for you, but you've got to get your armor on. You've got to go down and you've got to do what you need to do. And Mark 16 says that the Lord worked with them in all things. So it's a partnership. And, I drove to Mississauga, which is on the west. It's the west side of Toronto. It's a suburb. It's like 600,000 people there. But it took me 2 hours to get there. And that was the only reason I went down, didn't take up an offering to cover gas and everything else. Everybody knows how tight it's been for us, but it was just like, no, I got to go talk to this guy. And yet, now God has brought another one in. He brought a former mobster and police informant into the kingdom, who's now a son of God. I mean, I still, it says the angels are rejoicing. They're still partying up there. This is huge, that a guy like this who suffered for so many years because of what he had done, only to realize. And I told him, I said, when I came to faith 21 years ago, I got really angry at the Jewish community because they had kept the truth from me. And so he asked me yesterday, he says, well, I want to go tell my rabbi. I was just like, easy, Tiger. Let's wait on that one a little before. You got to get a little bit of experience and theology under your belt, because they're going to try to confuse you. But he's zealous. Yeah. He's zealous. You can't get Christians to get out there and share the gospel if you light a fire under them, literally.
Yeah. They're not very good at. It sucks.
Sometimes ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So anyway, we're so excited. And someone said to me that God gave you your prize. So this was my reward for all the source, all the trouble, the aggravation that we've had to put up with, and how everybody, betrays us and walks away. I was telling you, a couple of people had just done that this past weekend, but God is shifting things, and that's the exciting thing. And I can kind of see what he's doing. And, in these end times, I'm just reading a book right now. It's called OPJB, which is Operation James Bond. And it's the account of the guy who is primarily involved in this, about getting Martin Bormann out of Germany at the end of the war. And Ian Fleming, who's the creator of the James Bond franchise, was the head of this, part of the British military. It was top secret and everything else, because Martin Bormann had all of the Nazi wealth. He had the accounts and everything else, and they had to get him out. So everybody thinks that he disappeared, committed suicide, whatever. No, they got him out of there, and because of that, they were able to recoup a lot of the what the Nazis had stolen and returned it back to, countries and whatever. And that was Churchill's main objective with this guy. And just listening to the guy who wrote this, who worked for Fleming, and the experience he had, it was like, you know what? War is hard. And he gives graphic accounts of how agents were found out, they were murdered, they ended up committing suicide with the cyanide pill because they were going to be tortured to death. War is ugly business. Somehow we've got this idea within Christianity in North America today that it's all going to be good, and once you come to Jesus, your problems are going to be solved. When you come to Jesus, sometimes your problems are just beginning. But they're your earthly problems. They're not your eternal problems. And when we can, you got to go back to Acts 5:41, which says that they rejoiced and that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name's sake. When we go through difficulty and betrayal and stuff like that, God is hardening us. He's callousing up our souls so that we can be prepared for the final battle. Because we are going to have to be lean, mean fighting machines when society goes down. I mean, you got that false flag attack over in Saudi Arabia right now. Oil prices are now going, jumping through the roof. Tell me this wasn't all contrived. Now they're going to try strangling us with gas prices, and it's going to go up, 50 cents a gallon, 10, 15 cents a liter, whatever it is. It's all designed to make us suffer. And now they want to tax meat, because meat's apparently bad for you. I mean, it's bizarre. And if you're, living your comfortable Christianity, I'm dealing with the Kenyans over there. The orphans, they've got over 50 orphans, and we're doing a fundraiser for them this weekend to send some money over. They go to school hungry they go to bed hungry. We don't even understand what hunger is like in this, in our society in North America. And God is trying to prepare some of us to get ready for that, because most of the church, as soon as things get difficult, they're going to fall away. They have no idea how to survive when we have what's called our first world problems. We get a hangnail, the technology doesn't, my cell phone doesn't work, and people blow a gasket. And you got problems in the world that most people, here in North America, they can't even begin to imagine. And God has to prepare the remnant to be able to deal with that, because how are we going to survive when things get really tough? And so, when I was showering this morning, I was just thanking Lord for the toughening up and the preparation and the hardening. And I remember, when I used to do kickboxing and I taught for a while, I remember that if you didn't train on a regular basis, you got soft, and then you got in the ring, and then you got hit, and you got hit hard. And we got to be prepared, because when the enemy comes in, especially when God calls you to take a stand, when God calls you to say, hey, you know what? You need to go up against this force, or, you got to undertake this assignment. When we get sent on assignment, on Saturday, I talked about, the difference between the samurais and the ninjas. The ninjas were the spies. They went in and, they had to be masters at stealth and stuff like that. Sometimes we got to go in, we got to spy out the land. And when God calls us to do that, if we're not trained, if we're not hardened, battle hardened, we're going to get found out. We're going to get killed. And I'm watching believers every day get blown out and falling away from what God has called them to. And some of them falling away from the faith because they can't handle it. They don't realize that we're in a spiritual war, and God can't have any softies going out on the battle line, because you know what? They'll get annihilated. They'll step on a landmine. They'll get shot because they pick their head up out of the foxhole instead of learning how to keep it down.
Hey, Jamie, doesn't Darryl sound a little fired up?
I think so. I like it. Great.
What's up, Darryl? hey, man, pour yourself another cup of Joe, bro.
Nah, that's it, man. I've had my quota, because I'll be swinging from the rafters if I do that.
Swinging from the rabbis?
The rafters.
Oh,
The rafters.
Raptors?
The Raptors, yeah.
Oh, they said Raptors.
Champs.
Some
There
more
you
of
go.
that serpentine stuff. Oh, man.
My spicy coffee this morning.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff.
So lift up Marvin, and I'll have to see if maybe we can broadcast the service next Sunday night. We'll do
the baptismal?
Yep.
Okay. So then what are you doing this weekend? You're doing trumpets this weekend?
No, next weekend. This weekend's the fundraiser for the Kenyans.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought you said something about doing something this weekend as a feast, and I'm like, you're a little early, aren't you?
Not as early as some of the other folks out there, but yeah, it would be early, wouldn't it?
That are actually doing trumpets right now?
And nobody's listening.
I know who's doing that. My brother's doing that right now, actually. Yeah. So this coming weekend, I'll be in Seattle. And I was going to have a link, but I don't have a link. I was going to have a link. How do I get that link? Oh, I'm going to go find a link. Well, while you do that, I'm going to go find this link. But yeah, I'm going to be in Seattle, Crash Creative, this weekend, speaking on Bainbridge Island about stuff. This thing is spiritual, and
What fellowship are you going to be at on Bainbridge?
well, see, I'm trying to find it right now. Here, let me look at this.
I probably know him.
It's my buddy's church. He goes to this church. Hold on. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, there it is. And then I can find the link to the event. There it is. Island Church on Bainbridge Island. Yep. Hold on. I'm trying to. Give me a second. Trying to see if I can copy the link. Here, I'll just do that. All right, I'm coming back. Ready? Bam, I'm back. I don't know. Could you see me that whole time?
Yeah, we saw you the whole time.
Oh, man.
It
All right,
was
so this
entertaining.
This is a Facebook event link right there to this Saturday. It's no cost, but do register. If you're in the Northwest, come on by, say hi, and check out what we're talking about. My buddy, he used to be the drummer of my band. He's highly prophetic. He's been living in the Northwest for a while. This is his organization. He's having me come up, and we're pretty excited about what's going on with this and what he's doing up there and what God's doing up there. And so that's where I'll be this weekend. I'll be in Seattle this weekend, and then the following weekend. Is it already the feast?
Yeah, it's a feast coming up on the 13th, I think.
Man, it is. Look at that. So not this weekend, but the end of next weekend is the beginning of the fall feast.
Yep. Trumpets. If you're going
weeks ago.
If you're going with the Hillel calendar, then Trumpet starts on Sunday the 29th.
Yeah. Wow.
The feast starts the 13th, doesn't it?
No,
that's Sukkot. That's in October.
Well, based on the new moon, let's say
that's what I'm talking about. October. I'm in a different month. Okay.
Let's say the visible crescent happens on Monday, the 1st, or Tuesday, the 1st. If that happens, then we'll actually be in a line number-wise, like we are right now, with a lull. So we'll see what happens. But yes, the fall feasts are coming. That's in 2 weeks away, so you can still order your feast book and get it in the mail in time.
Yeah, well, how do they order that, Alan?
Well, where's Kevin? Is Kevin still here? Is he? He's not quick on the draw. Well, you would go to planetbluemedia.com.
Now, the reason I'm asking is I was on a phone call. Another miracle happened, too, is I needed a ticket, and I called somebody who works for Southwest, and I got a ticket. They're good friends, but I got a ticket for my flight, and they've never done a Feast of Tabernacles by themselves. They've always gone to Antidotes, and they're going to do one. And I was thinking it'd be great because I think, Jeannie, if you're listening, get this book from Alan. This would be a perfect book for you to help you do your feast. So that'd be terrific. That's why I was asking you to give all that information.
Okay. Well, also, if you're going to do your feast with Monty Judah's group, they actually carry my book in their store.
No, she couldn't get in. They're sold out.
Oh,
and so she's going to do her own. And so they got a farm. They got a big place. So we'll see.
So Monty Judah's group has been they've been buying my book, selling it in their bookstore for over a year. And I keep trying to get these guys. Well, if my book's such a hit over there, and you keep ordering, you keep selling it, when are you going to have me on your vidcast or your podcast, or bring me out to speak at one of these shindigs of yours? Crickets.
Now, Monty's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, well, anybody out there with the Lion and Lamb Ministry, you guys are carrying my book, and you should probably invite me to come out and speak at one of your events. Just saying.
Well, you need to get Ephraim to get a hold of you. He's kind of running the show.
I don't know who's running the show over there. Apparently, I'm not talking to the right guy when it comes to that stuff. But I'm very appreciative of them carrying my book. It's been a blessing to have that type of additional exposure.
Now, did they get that from A Rude Awakening?
No, I'm not even sure how they reached out to me or because of why, but it was rude, I think. Yeah.
It was what?
But that was pretty cool.
It was
It was pre-Rude Awakening, I believe.
It was? Okay, good.
Yeah, it was pre-Rude Awakening. So man. So we only got so we talked for a while about all this stuff that's going on in our little lives. Well, Darryl. And so I don't know if I want to. I was thinking about reading, going through the Torah portion about the blessings and the curses, but it's a lot of reading. There'd be very little to discuss at that point. Is there anything we can pull out? Ooh, I just got a snippet from Rude Awakening for my upcoming show in October that they don't want me to divulge to anybody. I'll be able to watch that without you knowing soon. Torah portion. Where were we? See? Shiny object. What? Look over here. Huh? Oh, I crack myself. I do this to entertain myself, people. Got to keep myself entertained. Do we have any questions out there in the audience tonight?
Well, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, I actually I slept on the Mount Ebal. It's back in, I guess it was 2002. I was in Israel and I stayed in a vineyard with a guy that actually lived on the mountain.
For the sake of our audience that might not be actually following along, could you explain to them what it is you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the Torah portion that talks about two mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And I'm sorry, it was Mount Gerizim that I was on. Mount Ebal is a mountain of cursing, and Mount Gerizim is a mountain of blessing. And it's up near Shechem. It's about 25 miles north of Jerusalem. And it's the two mountains that when the Israelites came into the country, this was a very interesting place. They had some really wonderful battles there. But this mountain, I'd met these people, and they had gone to Israel to actually be watchmen on the wall, and they dressed in biblical clothing, and they ended up, after moving several times because the government kept moving them, they came there and they had sold all their worldly possessions, and they'd come there to pray and depend on God to take care of them. And it was he was a chiropractor from, I believe, Michigan, and his wife and their children. They had 3, and they ended up having some more children in Israel. But they were there for several years, and I kept running into them. And so Shamar asked me, he actually, if I wanted to stay in a tent in the Kidron Valley, because he'd gotten permission to stay there for the week of Sukkot. In an Arab's vineyard. There's a house up there that's been there for 200 years, and these people, they're Palestinian, but they have 15 children. Guy drives a bus, and he'd met him because of the way he dresses in full. Shamar dressed in full biblical garb. Anyway, we stayed up there, and I actually wore biblical garb myself. There was 3 of us that stayed in this tent in the Kidron Valley for the feast. But he invited me also to come to his home. He'd found a home because they'd been moved, he and his wife, from different places, parks that they'd stayed in. They'd been up at near Tekoa in caves, and then they'd been down in Jericho. They'd been all over the country because every park that they would live in for a while, eventually the government would move them or tell them they had to move. Well, they were pretty radical. They had burnt their passports and made their decision that God was going to protect them and keep them there. So they were under the watchdogs of Israel, and they were, after a certain period of time, you have to leave and come back into the country, and they couldn't do that. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. But I went up there and I spent the weekend with them 1 week, and they lived in a house that had been abandoned by an Arab family in an olive grove, and their children and it was amazing how they were living. They weren't asking anybody for anything, and just depending on God to take care of them. And they didn't have electricity. They didn't have bathrooms. They had running water. It came out of a well that they said was one of Jacob's wells, and they had a hose that they were able to get water out of, and they would, everything was primitive. It was living like they did 2,000 years ago. And they're vegetarians, so the way they ate was really interesting. He was able to get people to come, and he'd treat, and they'd bring him and trade him food, because he was a professional chiropractor, and that's the way they were surviving. They had money, but they began to run out after a couple of years. They started running out of what they had, and so he was doing other things. But it was really an interesting experience. It was on Mount Gerizim. They originally, when they moved onto Mount Gerizim, they moved in an ancient synagogue near the top of the mountain, but they eventually got kicked out of that, and then they got moved down. And this Arab who had this house said, if you'll keep the goats and other things from coming and eating my olives, I'll let you stay there with your family. So that's how they got blessed to stay there. But it was quite an experience. Okay.
That is a trip. That's so. In case, So just to catch up the audience, because I'm not sure where they're at on any of this, but if you've read and if you're reading This Thing Is Spiritual, I talk about how Jesus and the Samaritan woman are having a conversation, and Jesus is telling her they don't know where to worship because salvation comes from the Jew, and she's a Samaritan woman. We talked about that in the book. Well, Mount Gerizim is the mountain that Samaritans believed was the proper place of worship versus Mount Zion. That's why Jesus is telling them, you don't know where because you're not Israeli, you're not Jewish. And Gerizim is where Moses put half the tribes as a blessing, and then the other mountain, what was it, Ebal was the other mountain of cursing where the other tribes were. And that's what Jamie is talking about, doing his cosplay biblical clothing sleepover with these people on that mountain. And but it's very interesting thing here. I do want to read this section though, and thank you, Jamie, for that information, because we've talked about how in the past on this show we've talked about how Jamie has been over there and has done some things when he was working with the Root Awakening crew with Michael Root, and he's done a couple things that only a handful of people have actually done, and that's actually going to the taking the that trek through the mountains to Aqaba, to the Sea of Aqaba. Isn't that correct, Jamie? Yeah. And that's, to me, that's always been fascinating, and we've talked about that and on this show before. But here I do want to read this one section here. It's coming from chapter 27, starting in verse 15. Here's just some of the basic things. And this, how do we apply these to our lives, or how do we make sure we don't fall into these categories? Cursed be the man who makes a carved or cast metal image, an abomination to the Lord, a thing made by the hands of a craftsman, and sets it up in secret, and all the people shall answer and say, Amen. We're talking about false god stuff here, false idol stuff. And again, a thing made by the hands of a craftsman. And we do talk about Bezalel and This Thing Is Spiritual, and all the various, and how crafting or crafts are spiritual and of the Lord. Cursed be anyone who dishonors his father or his mother. Cursed be anyone who moves his neighbor's landmark. I like that one. Cursed be anyone who misleads a blind man on the road. That's just not cool. Cursed be anyone who perverts the justice due to the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. Very important. You cannot do that. Cursed be anyone who lies with his father's wife, because he has uncovered his father's nakedness. That's what was happening in Corinthians that Paul had to deal with. Cursed be anyone who lies with any kind of animal, and all the people shall say amen. Cursed be anyone who lies with his sister, whether the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother. This includes your stepsister, which is why it breaks down whether it's a daughter of your father or your mother. So it doesn't have to be a 100% blood sister. If it's a stepsister or a half-sister, it counts. Cursed be anyone who lies with his mother-in-law. Cursed be anyone who strikes down his neighbor in secret. Cursed be anyone who takes a bribe to shed innocent blood. Cursed be anyone who does not confirm the words of this law by doing them.
I actually used that verse with Marvin to show that you got to keep the whole Torah or it's no good. You can't pick and choose. If you break, I've always explained Torah as being like a ball with 613 pins. And if you pull one of the pins out, the whole thing collapses. You're guilty of it all. And he got it. He understood. It was amazing.
Right. Let's clarify that again, because it's 606 laws, right? Because there's 7 of them that are rabbinical,
right?
Making up to 613,
right?
Right. And because we always say 613, we always say 613 because we always include the 7 rabbinical laws that aren't actually in the Torah. We discussed that in the feast book as well. So it's 606, right? I just wanted to clarify that for whoever, if it helps anyone. But
for Jewish people, you say 613, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. Absolutely. Because if you say 606, that's a trigger.
Then you are a heretic.
Yes. All right. These are some. Now there's something I did want to talk about. This one little thing. Where is it? Oh, go back to the top of the portion on chapter 26, offering of first fruits and tithes. We've done this as a community, and it is really pretty awesome. It's really awesome, and I don't know if how many of you are in an actual community who are in a physical community, but this is a really cool thing to do. It's talking about your first fruits from the harvest of the produce of the land, from what you're getting out of the land when you get into the land. You shall go to the priest, starting in verse 3, chapter 26. You shall go to the priest who is in office at that time. So that would be my wife and I in our community, and you'll say to them, I declare today to the Lord your God that I have come into the land that the Lord swore to our fathers to give us. Then the priest shall take the basket from your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord your God. And it's your first fruits offering is in that basket. And you can always go to Proverbs 10 about that, I believe. Is it Proverbs 10? Your barns will be full from the first. I think it's Proverbs 10, isn't it? It's not 3, right? I think it's 10. And you shall make a response before the Lord your God. And then there's like this whole thing you're supposed to say to God in front of the priest, and how God's delivered you, and you cried out, and He takes you away from Egypt, brings you to this good land, and He brought us, verse 9, He brought us into this place and give us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And behold, now I bring the first of the fruit of the ground, which you, O Lord, have given me, and you shall set it down before the Lord your God, and worship before the Lord your God. And you shall rejoice in all the good that the Lord your God has given to you and to your house, you and the Levite and the sojourner who's among you. Then when you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the 3rd year, there's this whole like little ceremony here between you and the Father in front of the priest. You bring your basket, your tithe, and your first fruit. It's really awesome. We've done it with with our community members, and it's powerful. It's spirit powerful. The Holy Spirit just like, it's really good. And then you bless them and you charge them with how they're going to obey and keep the commandments. Starting in verse 16. It's awesome. Have you guys ever done this little ritual here that we find in chapter 26?
Actually, I did it in Israel again. When I was with a guy named Joshua Cohen, who's a Kohanim. He's a really interesting guy. He was a Jewish guy from Canada, and he went to Israel. And the reason he went to Israel was he'd actually graduated from Liberty University, and he had gone to that school and became a believer while he was in college. and he was filled with the Holy Spirit. And I met him in Israel, and he really unique guy. But we were hanging out during the Feast of First Fruits, and we went down to the Pool of Shalom, got watered, went up to the Hulda Gate, brought the basket of fruit. We went through the whole thing. It was amazing.
Right.
It was just an amazing time. There's only three of us that did it, but it was the fact that we did it right there at the sealed up Hulda Gate.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like I said, we did it as a community, and people brought their offering in a basket. And so Desiree has a good answer. She has a good question. Tithing, I feel, is unclear in Hebrew roots teaching. Some teach it, some do not. Yes, actually, we don't actually tithe, and I explained that in the feast book. We don't actually tithe because the tithe is for the Levite. It's exclusively for the Levite, and we don't have a Levitical priesthood. So this what we're talking about actually falls under the first fruits prior to the third year tithe, the basket and all that. So the first that's the first fruits offering, which is what we were doing. Our community was doing a first fruits offering following this this order of service in chapter 26. But we don't actually tithe because there's no Levitical priesthood.
Although
Darryl,
we are called a nation of kings and priests, and the pastor, the shepherd, you can make a case for them taking on the role of the Levite, which primarily was to serve in the temple, but also to teach the people. So if you look at Torah, if you look at tithing having been begun by Abraham with Melchizedek and then Jacob continuing that, and where obviously Isaac would have as well, although we don't hear about that, it's a principle that actually predates Torah. So
yes.
I think you can make a case for the 10% being still in place. But whether you call it a first fruit, whether
an offering, a gift,
I don't think it makes a difference. The principle is that you have to give back to the Lord the best.
Right. Exactly. And we do stress that. We do emphasize that in the feast book. You do have to give, be it an offering, a first fruits, a gift, whatever. Yeah, you do have to give. That we do agree on that as totally. I do mention that I know for a fact a lot of Christian pastors believe they're in the role of a Levite, but then they shouldn't have any land. They shouldn't be owning anything. Good luck getting that.
No, I mean, the Levites own land. They didn't have a territory, but they were given Levitical.
They were given an inheritance, a territory, yes.
So
but
they actually had farmland. They had property within the other territories.
Right.
So it says that they don't have their own territory. That God is their inheritance, but God placed them in, because Barnabas was a Levite and he sold his land in order to give the money to the apostles for the sake of the community. The Levites were actually supposed to own farmland within the other territory so that every territory could teach. And Jeroboam violated that when he kicked all the Levites out and had them go back to Judah because he set up his own priesthood.
Right. But as what I meant by owning is as far as ownership. Right? I mean, they were given, but it wasn't like theirs, like they owned it because it was within someone else's territory.
They had, the way that I see it is they had ownership just like all the other territories because their city was a Levitical city.
Right. I don't necessarily agree that that today's Christian pastors are Levites. Today's version of Levites.
We do have to be careful about making. I think there's a principle there.
I understand what you mean by that. Yes.
But no, you can't say that. Well, because then we don't have a temple, and you're correct.
Right. And they actually say that I've heard a lot of pastors say, "Yeah, we function in that role, so give me your tithe."
It's amazing how pastors want to keep the tithe, but get the rest of Torah.
Right. That's where I usually go with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that clear as mud, Desiree? What's the first fruit? We do first fruits every month at the beginning of every month instead of tithing. And again, that's explained in the feast book. so we bring, the community brings their first fruits, and it's a percentage of whatever they make monthly. We don't tell them, oh, it has to be 10% or oh, it has to be 25%. I know people that give like 90% of their income, and they're like doing just fine because of it, because that's their level of faith. I mean, that's intense, but good. She says that's clear as mud for her. Well, we got like 7 minutes left on the clock. Anybody else have anything? Any questions out there? Anybody have anything out there? Do you guys have anything? Is Israel election today going to change things in the Middle East?
I think this verse in verse 26 is one of the key verses when sharing the faith with Jewish people, is that they have to keep all of Torah perfectly. And that's where it says, James confirms that in 2 verse 10, where he says, if you break one of the commandments, you're guilty of the whole law. So if you want an old covenant reference, this is the one, which says that you have to keep Torah perfectly if you're going to justify yourself.
Right. Here, this one we're going to send to you, Jamie. Darryl, to begin with. Where is it? Here we go. Is Israel election today going to change things in the Middle East? And we don't have to take it very far.
It always changes things in the Middle East. Someone actually just sent me something yesterday that says that this election is meeting biblical prophecy. And they go into, they're talking to the Orthodox Jews about this. But the fact that this is the first time in Israel's over 70-year history that an election did not produce a government. And you've got this combined with the saber rattling going on with Iran now. I mean, that's scary stuff. And there's a pretty good chance that they won't have anything definitive after this election too. So, you've got Israel at a political stalemate because this government obviously is not of God. It's a secular government. It is primarily run by the elite. And there's even suggestion that Benjamin Netanyahu is a 33rd degree Mason. So it always changes things in the Middle East. What people don't understand is all world events and the history of the world has always and will continue to revolve around what happens in Israel, because that's the battleground.
On BB's sake, I also know people that have met with him, and he seems to have accepted the Lord too. And he had a situation with his son where he had a friend of mine went in and prayed for his son. He got better, and prayed for him in the name of Yeshua. So, you hear a lot. I don't know how much you can buy, whether he's a 33rd degree Mason. He may be. I don't know I don't know all that, but I do know that he's done some really good things for Israel. Well,
listen, he is the man for the time, and he is God's servant. Whether he's we can say the same thing about Donald Trump, and we've talked about this ad nauseum too, that for all of Trump's flaws, he is God's man. And Trump has messed up a lot of things for the New World Order. Like apparently there is a meeting down in Antarctica of the globalist leaders to pray, offer sacrifices, whatever that looks like. And we dare not delve too deeply into that in order to gain more demonic power to get their agenda done, because Trump's really thrown a monkey wrench into things.
Oh, he really has. He's this whole thing where they thought they were going to be able to do. We can go on for hours. I'm not going to get started.
No. Should we do should we dedicate a Tuesday to conspiracy theories?
Don't we do that every week?
Our conspiracy facts. You can think
that too. Surely we could. Because this ties in. Antarctica. Why up there? Well, there's a hole up there that takes you into Middle Earth. That's where the serpentine people come out of, and that's where UFOs actually come out of. They come out of the ocean, or they come from out of the middle of the earth. And Hitler and this, and Illuminati that. And did you see my eyes? No. I could just go on.
Have you met any of those half lizard people over there in Utah?
I haven't actually, and I've been asked. So as much fun as I do make about these conspiracy theorist people and how they make it part of their theology, I do believe in the Genesis 6 accounts, 100% fully, and have for an incredibly long time, 30 plus years, easily. And I've been asked, have you ever met a Nephilim before or a hybrid? And I say no, because I don't believe I actually have. I think I would know if I have, since I know since I have.
I met one in Israel.
Really? Since I'm well versed on the subject matter.
6 fingers. I got
6
pictures.
fingers. Yeah, that's a pretty big clue right there. 6 digits. Now, I have unfortunately met a whole bunch of people, many on various occasions. Actually, the last time was a couple years ago, 2 or 3, a couple years ago, maybe even a year ago here in Utah, where they believe they're like one of the 2 witnesses. They believe they're Elijah or whatever. That's always a hoot for me. And but no, I don't believe I've actually have met a hybrid or a Nephilim. I'm pretty sure I would know, because they know me. I know that was a weird thing to say, but
Well, of course they would know us.
not all of us.
Well, if the spirit's alive within you, then they would know.
Yes,
they can sense it.
There are parameters.
The demoniac ran up to Yeshua and bowed down at him, and he says, "What do we have to do with you?"
Yeah,
because
I know.
Most
I know. That's an incredibly powerful testimony of proximity that I love. Yeah, I'm with you on
that. And I want the demonic realm to know who I am, and I want them to know who I serve, because greater is He who is within me than he who is in this world.
Yes, I don't. Yeah, and that's dangerous, because I don't think not everybody is supposed to. It's you have to know how to do that. Don't go out there and just do that. I'm not talking to you. I'm just, people don't go out there and just do that unless you're well versed and have been trained in doing that, because it's a dangerous thing.
Well, again, like
They've been around for a while.
Like I spoke about on Saturday, you have the samurais who were the warrior class, and then you have the ninjas who were the spies. Their whole job was to do intel. Their whole job, and they were, in equally as good shape as the samurai, sometimes even better. I mean, one of the things they would have to do is they would have to hang off of a beam in a house for hours at a time with just your fingers. You got to be trained in order to do that. And we have to be trained spiritually, because spiritual warfare, you got to have, and the most important thing is having your armor on.
Right.
And every aspect of the armor of God is about righteousness, truth, and salvation, and a peace, and all these different. It's all about the armor of light, the light of Yeshua. If there is a chink in your armor and you're going into battle, and depending on what you're going into battle with, but when you start being called into dealing with like principalities,
right,
and they're called archons, which are which are the primary. Some of these aren't even just demons; they're fallen angels. They have authority in the second heaven. And if you go in, we've talked about this in the past few weeks, if you go in and you start rattling, I mean, this thing might not even know that you're there. And if you go announce yourself and you haven't been sent in, that's like Godzilla coming down on you. There ain't nowhere to run.
Yeah,
it's
real stuff.
And people they've had their lives destroyed. People have been killed.
Yeah. Yes, they have.
You don't go into battle against something that you don't have God going in before you, because God says, I'm repeating the sermon on Saturday, but he says, I love what Yahaziah says to Jeroboam, not Jeroboam, but Jehoshaphat. He says to him, you go down to the ascent of Ziz and see the salvation of the Lord. You have to get ready. You have to put your armor on. You have to go down, but God's going to fight the battle for you.
Right.
So we do have to go in, but God is the one who goes before us. And when the enemy comes in the flood, like the battle.
Yeah, I talk about that in this. Yeah, it's true. It's important stuff. So Desiree is asking if we can give them an entire show of questioning someday. So she's suggesting a Q&A with extended showtime. You guys want to do that next week?
Sure.
I'm always game for that.
As long as I got my book.
Jamie's representing. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do an extended show time next week. Let's do some Q&A.
Well, let's have the questions prepared ahead of time and maybe submitted to us so it speeds things up a little.
Right. Okay, so you can send. So here, let's say Chameleon Church Q. I'm putting it up right here. Hold on, Q&A show, and that's going to be what's next week's dates?
24th.
24th. And that's going to be 09.24. Send questions to info at ChameleonChurch.com. Let's do that, people. All right. Chameleon Church Q&A show next Tuesday. Send questions to info at ChameleonChurch.com.
So, Allan, are you going to pass them to us, or are we just going to be like we know well prepared?
I will include you guys in the questions as they come in, the ones we are going to talk about, and we'll, yeah.
No, Alan's
I'm gonna throw them at you. You're going to have to be ready. Your ninja skills. What's wrong? Exactly. So that's what we'll do next week. So come up with some good ones, and we reserve the right to no.
To go.
We reserve the right to piss you off. How'd you say that out loud? I'm sorry. Cool. And Desiree, did you see where we're sending those questions? 7 Sons of Shiva effect. Yeah. No, that's yeah. So info at ChameleonChurch.com, and we will go through those questions. We'll deem which ones are suitable, or I don't know how we're going to do that, but yeah, and we will. Yeah, and we will do that. We will do a Q&A next week. Cool. I'll be coming straight from. I come back home Monday from Seattle, so we'll do a brief little. Hey, how was your weekend? How was your week? And then go right into the Q&A. Cool. Everyone good? Everyone all right?
So you'll make sure you have your drug of choice ready.
That's right. That's right. Drug of choice. And hey, did you guys notice that Mark is doing little snippets from shows randomly on the Lamb Radio Network YouTube channel? He is. So
yeah, it's a really cool feature, actually.
Check this out. Yeah, pretty cool. And well, heck,
we have to let him know which of today's segments we think might be a good one.
Well, I'm sure you can tell him which one you think is the best. And really, it probably was. It's great story.
Yeah, Darryl, which one is your favorite segment from the
coffee thing?
The coffee thing, the anti-prophetic coffee drinker thing.
We're all disqualified. What are we even doing on right now?
Leading everyone astray.
Yes, apparently.
Okay, it's time to say the prayer and get off the air.
All right. You want to pray for us, Jamie?
Yes. Well, Heavenly Father, we come before you and we just thank you for the privilege of you allowing us to give our words, hopefully all the words that you want us to say today. And Father, I thank you for your blessing upon this ministry, the ministry that we're with today, the what's the name of this ministry? Lamb Ministry. I get that wrong.
I get it wrong all the time too. It's Lamb Radio YouTube Network, whatever video show.
Okay, we're thankful for it. We thank you for blessing the elections, and thank you for all the things that are going on in our country, and that you protect and keep our country. Amen.
Amen. And we will see you. We'll see all of you next week.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.